What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Doctor Who Classic review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the second Doctor Patrick Troughton story, The Invasion. This is the final Cyberman story for the second Doctor's era. If you don't know, the second Doctor had 4 Cyberman stories in his era. Only 3 of them are available to watch on DVD. The Wheel in Space is not available to watch. So this is the 4th one altogether. The Wheel in Space is the 3rd, but we can't watch the Wheel in Space, so technically this is really the last one we can watch. So yeah, I was interested to watch this one because this is actually the last Cyberman story I had to watch apart from the Wheel in Space. So now I have seen it. I have seen all of the available Cyberman stories in Classic and New Who. So in the next couple of weeks or so, maybe even next week, I might do a ranking of all the Cyberman stories, not including the Wheel in Space. So if you'd like to see that, please tell me below. But anyway, let's get into this one. This is The Invasion by Derek Sherwin. Investigating the disappearance of an intermittent scientist, the Doctor and his companions follow his trail to the London headquarters of International Electromatics, a global supplier of electronic equipment run by the formidable Tobias Vaughan. Teaming up with the newly formed United Nations Intelligence Task Force unit under the command of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, it soon becomes apparent that Vaughan is working to his own sinister agenda. As Cybermen invade in cities all over the world, can the Doctor convince Vaughan to help him defeat their plan for global domination? So yeah, this is a pretty interesting story, this one, because it is a Cyberman story, but it's also very much just Tobias Vaughan. I'd say that he is the main villain more so than the Cybermen, because Cybermen, this is an 8-part story, so a fairly long one, an 8-part story, which means it's, I'd say, probably almost 3 hours long, and the Cybermen don't show up until right at the end of part 4, so literally halfway through the Cybermen show up, and still, even after that, Tobias Vaughan is really the main villain. So this is almost more of just a kind of, one-off villain sort of story, with Vaughan being the villain, and then the Cybermen are just kind of the Cybermen are kind of the secondary villain. So it's an interesting story in that regard. Anyway, let's get on, starting off with the cast. Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. Yeah, I mean, he's great. What else do I need to say? When is Patrick Troughton not great? I just love him more and more every time I see him. Such a great Doctor. He's quickly becoming one of my favourite Doctors. I just love him so much. He's so good with his companions. Altogether, he has those funny moments, he has the serious moments. Yeah, he's got plenty to do throughout this story, with it being an 8-part, pretty much everyone has something to do, which is nice. I guess that is one good thing about this being such a long story. It does mean that pretty much everybody has something relatively, relatively good to do. So that's nice. But yeah, Patrick Troughton is on top form as always. Same goes for Fraser Hines as Jamie McCrimmon. I love Jamie so much. He's such a good companion. Of course, he's pretty much he really is with the second Doctor throughout his whole 3-year run. Only story he wasn't in was Power of the Daleks, the second Doctor's first story, but then after that in the Highlanders he came into it. And he was in it all the way up until the War Games. So he is the quintessential second Doctor companion, and he's so good. Fraser Hines' chemistry with Patrick Troughton is amazing. He's just funny as well. I like his moments with Zoe and also with Isabel, one of the guest characters in this episode. Yeah, I love Jamie so much. And then Wendy Padbury as Zoe Harriet. She's pretty good in this one as well, actually. I've been a bit kind of all over the place with Zoe. I've only seen her in I think this will actually be the 4th story I've seen her in now, because I've seen her in this, the War Games, the Mind Robber, and the Seeds of Death. So this will be my 4th outing with Zoe, and I think she's decent here. She's probably the best that I've seen her so far, maybe. The last story I watched with her in was the War Game, not the War Games, the Mind Robber, and in that one she was a little bit too screamy. In this one though, she has quite a lot to do with Isabel, even with the Brigadier and stuff as well. She's separated from the Doctor and Jamie quite a lot. Actually, she's with Jamie quite a lot, but she's separated from the Doctor for a lot of this story. But yeah, I think Zoe's actually pretty good in this story, so I do quite like her. Let's move on to the good and the bad, starting with the good. Starting with the good, we've got the animation. So if you didn't know, this is an 8-part story. Parts 1 and 4 are animated because the episodes have been lost. We haven't found them yet, so they animated those 2 episodes. I believe this is one of the first animations, because firstly, on the DVD it's actually got a little sticker saying Special Edition DVD, and it like tells you about the animation. Doesn't usually do that, not on the front of the DVDs anyway, on the back yes, but not the front. Also, this was only 2006 that this DVD was released, so it's actually one of the earlier classic DVD releases. So, I mean, this might be the first animation, don't quote me on that. It's definitely one of the early ones though, if it's 2006. And to be honest, the animation, it's not as good as it was in like the moon base and stuff like that, but it is still pretty good animation. I actually thought this animation was good. The mouth, the lips sync up pretty well, and altogether it just looks good. So yeah, I was actually pretty happy with the animation. The Doctor getting annoyed at technology, I thought that was pretty cool in the first episode where, you know, there's all these machines and stuff that the Doctor finds, and he can't figure out how to work the machines properly. Zoe, one thing I actually quite like about Zoe in this story that I actually didn't get to write down, but I just thought of it now. Zoe's very smart, she's from the future, she's very technologically minded, and she's actually a lot better with these computers, these machines, than the Doctor is in some ways. You know, she ends up destroying one by talking to it with all this technological blibber blabber, and she destroys the machine. I thought that was pretty funny and a pretty cool moment. But yeah, the Doctor getting annoyed at the technology, I think it's great. He's like, oh, I always hate machines, I hate machines so much. You think the Doctor, being the person, the technologically minded person he is, he'd kind of, you know, understand technology a bit, but he really doesn't understand this stuff, and he just hates it, and I find that pretty funny. Of course, a big thing for this story is the introduction to UNIT. Now, Lethbridge Stewart, the Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, had been introduced previously in The Web of Fear. I believe this is his second story, The Web of Fear being his first. However, in that, UNIT wasn't a thing. He was Colonel Lethbridge Stewart. He was just part of the military, from what I remember. However, in this one, he's actually got and made this United Nations Intelligence Task Force. He's basically made UNIT. He's fairly high up in it anyway. And yeah, this is the introduction to UNIT, which would obviously become to be a very big part of the Third Doctor's era. Remembering this is towards the end of the Second Doctor's, so yeah, I do really like that we get our proper introduction to UNIT here, and they really do feel like they do later on, so that's pretty cool. Some really good music in this one. The Cybermen are always, for me, the Cybermen have been one of the best, you know, recurring villains for music. The Daleks are pretty good for music, especially in the new series, but I think mainly, if we're talking about both series, the Cybermen probably have some of the best music. I remember the music in the 10th Planet and the Moon Base was amazing. Earthshot has some great music. A lot of the new series, I love the new series Cyberman theme from like Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel. I can't really remember what sort of music they're doing with the Cybermen now, but you know, on the whole, I think Cybermen has some really, really good music, and altogether, not just the Cybermen's music, but just the music in general in this episode is really good. Tobias Vaughan is a very sly and menacing villain. Now, I think I would have a lot of issues with this episode if Tobias Vaughan wasn't so good at being a villain. Like I said, the Cybermen don't show up until halfway through, and I was really hoping to see more Cybermen. But the fact that Tobias Vaughan is such a good villain throughout those first 4 parts, especially since he has to carry it without the Cybermen, it's just so good. I think he just does such a great job. He's so sly. The way he looks and everything, it's just so good. I think he's such a great villain. The machine that gives Cybermen their emotions. It's always pretty cool when they play with the Cybermen's emotions, because of course Cybermen are emotionless. They don't have emotions because they feel like emotions are a weakness. And I do quite like it when the Doctor or whoever's going up against Cybermen decide to use emotions against them, to like give them emotions back again, so that the people that they once were, because remember, Cybermen were once just normal people, humans, or, you know, a variation of, who had emotions, and then when they were converted into Cybermen, all their emotions were taken away from them because they are not needed, they're seen as a weakness. So I like how, Tobias Vaughan gets the Professor to make this machine for him, because he's kind of working with the Cybermen, but at the same time he isn't, and he ends up, you know, trying to defeat the Cybermen with this emotion machine thing, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. Maybe a little bit, used a little bit too much nowadays, you know, playing with the Cybermen's emotions, but especially for back then, it was something that I think worked very well, and just a really cool little thing. Iconic imagery of the Cybermen walking in London. Some of the most iconic moments from Doctor Who in this story. The Cybermen, you know, walking down the steps in front of, I can't remember the building's name, but, you know, all through London, walking down the streets of London. It's a lot like the Daleks going through London in the Dalek invasion of Earth. And I mean, this one was so big that, you know, kind of so, you know, iconic that they kind of mirrored it and kind of copied it in the 2014 story from series 8 of the new series, Dark Water and Death in Heaven. They kind of had the same sort of thing going on with the Cybermen in London, a lot of the same similar shots as well. So it's very, very iconic because of that, you know, coming out of the sewers and all that sort of stuff. Just very iconic imagery, just some really cool scenes of all the Cybermen when they do finally invade. That's definitely one of the best parts of this story, I think. And then finally, the Doctor running away from the Cybermen's gun explosions. I've seen this clip before, the Doctor running away from the Cybermen, and you know, there's explosions behind him. It's actually on the front cover of the DVD. You've got the Doctor jumping away from an explosion. Just the way that Patrick Troughton's Doctor runs, he's like such a bumbling idiot, basically. I mean, that's kind of what the second Doctor is, especially. He's just this bumbling, slightly scaredy cat Doctor. He's actually one of the only Doctors that seems to be scared quite a lot of the time. You know, he doesn't quite, I mean, he still stands up for himself, and he's still very powerful, and, you know, he stands up to the villains and defeats them in the end. But, you know, the second Doctor is one of those Doctors who he's a bit more kind of silly, and he doesn't seem quite as brave as a lot of the other Doctors, and I think that really works for Patrick Troughton perfectly. He does it so well. And I mean, it's one of the moments here when he's running away from the Cybermen, you know, just the way he's running and jumping, it's so comedic, it's so amazing, such an action-packed scene as well. It's literally got everything good going for it. Alright, so for the bad, there are a couple of things to say. Nothing too monumental though. To start off with, the Cybermen aren't revealed until the end of part 4. It's not even that they just don't really come into the story till the end of part 4. They're not even revealed to be in the story until the end of part 4. Especially when you have a look at the back of the DVD and it tells you the Cybermen in it. Cybermen are in it on the DVD. It also, of course, on the front of the DVD tells you that the Cybermen, shows you that the Cybermen are in it. Of course, when it was first broadcast, this wouldn't have been the case. It would have been more of a surprise, I imagine. But yeah, I do think it takes a little while. You know, right at the end of part 4, we finally get to realize this is the Cybermen. So that's a little bit disappointing. Then the only other thing is that, kind of with the same sort of thing, it could have been a tad shorter. I think 8 episodes is a little bit too long. Like I said, it's almost 3 hours long from what I can kind of grasp of it, and that is a little bit too long. It does just go on for a little bit too long, in my opinion. I'm still relatively engaged throughout the whole 8 parts, but yeah, it is definitely a little too long. Could have done with, you know, getting rid of some stuff in there. However, it's not like one of those stories that I think is way too long. It's just, yeah, it could have worked as a 6-parter, although it does still work as an 8-parter. So for a rating, I'm going to give The Invasion a 9.5 out of 10. I can't quite give it a 10 because of the way the Cybermen do take quite a while to come into it, and because of how it is a little bit too long. But I'm still giving it a 9.5 because the stuff that is in there is really good. I think Tobias Vaughan is a brilliant one-off villain, and he works when the Cybermen aren't there. When the Cybermen do come into it, they are very good. There's a lot of them, probably the most Cybermen we'd seen on screen up until this point. So that's really awesome. I think they're really good. The Doctor and all the companions are great. It's great to have the Brigadier back, well, as the Brigadier for the first time, but have a unit there as well for the first time. It's really cool. So yeah, altogether I really did enjoy The Invasion, so a 9.5 out of 10 is what I'm giving it. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe. Go into the description and follow me on Twitter. That would be really much appreciated. And I'll see you guys in the next video.